Chapter 11. Young People and Those Who Care About Them. Climate anxiety is taking a toll on children and young people around the globe. They see the evidence before them with clear eyes rather than the practiced denial of their elders. In this chapter, I offer some perspectives by and for young people, starting with the voices of 3 young adults. Britt Ray has also written a valuable book from the perspective of young adults. Perspective. Making a life in strange times. Ellen's goal is a happy life. Perspective. Grim but not resigned. Andrew fears for our political future, so he's politically active. Perspective. Supported and supporting. Ari supports climate activists younger than she is. Telling children the truth. We can do so in age-appropriate ways while doing our own inner work. Providing children a secure base. This looks different at different ages, but is the foundational gift we can give children. Perspective. Teaching children ecophilia. Peter teaches children to recognize and love the non-human world around them in his forced school. Many voices. What do the old owe the young? In our speech and in our actions. And being responsible elders. Some ideas to address this lack in my culture. Perspective. Making a life in strange times. Ellen lives with her parents in northern Scotland. Her mother is a climate scientist, and so she grew up with an awareness of the dire state of the planet. At 23, she recently graduated from university with an art degree. Facing an uncertain future, Ellen doesn't have a plan, and she doesn't want a plan. She claims she's taking after her mother by winging it. Quote, I think my one goal, which is probably a really good one, to have in a time of climate crisis, is that I want to be happy. Everything else is negotiable, unquote. Art was her major in college. She does art now because it brings her all the blessings, the kinds of blessings, and it takes her away from the world's troubles for a while. She notes that art can also help people express these troubles. She can produce custom art to sell, pet portraits to be exact, and that's not a fit for a day job. For now, she chooses to work in a grocery store called the Co-op. While still somewhat corporate, it allows members to vote on things like raises for her and her coworkers. It also allows her to make modest contribution to an organization that helps children experience the outdoors. Recently, she made a fuss about the store selling frozen Asian shrimp when shrimp are being caught 20 miles away. Ellen does feel mood effects from the state of the world. Quote, it's something that I've got to come to terms with and not let it crush my spirit, unquote. She offers an unusual strategy for helping her mood. Quote, I have massive abundance of houseplants, probably 30. I got my first houseplant in university from one of my girlfriends. She got a load of houseplants to help her cope with anxiety and depression. You see, plants can sense those kinds of things, and they will not thrive in an unhappy environment. I have these living things that need my care and attention. It's helped. She notes that even her friends with lucrative jobs are realizing that they'll probably never be able to afford to buy a house. She is tired of people with paid-off mortgages telling her generation to, quote, work harder, unquote. She lives in a rural area with her parents, who enjoy her company. Her mother was always honest when Ellen asked difficult questions growing up, even when the truth was messy, so she was never under any illusions, and seeing her mother cope helped her handle her own worries about the world. At university, when she brought up topics like climate collapse or social collapse, asking what might be done to prevent the human race from going extinct, people would call her crazy. A couple of close friends understood. Together they shopped at the local greengrocer, finding awkward-shaped cucumbers and enormous carrots and enjoying not buying corporate. At a recent musical festival, though, she heard people who were aware, who were not expecting to go back the following year because they can no longer afford it, and other things were a priority, like learning to grow their own food even in little apartments. She wonders about the unraveling that the future will bring, but she trusts that community will matter, growing food will matter, and finding ways to exchange without money will help too. With a boyfriend 500 miles away, Ellen finds herself on buses and trains for long periods. She's discovered a way to feel useful on these journeys. She takes an anti-racism book with her. People walk past, see the cover, and either smile at her or turn away. That way she knows who to talk to. A young man came and sat next to her on the bus. Sitting down, he turned to her and said, "I figured the girl reading that book is my best bet to have a safe journey home as a black man." Oh, wow. She was happy to have taken that book with her. It meant that he had at least a short period of the journey where he knew he was supported. She thinks every journey should be a safe journey. Perspective. Grim but not resigned. Andrew is a 29-year-old professional musician who grew up in Southern California and recently moved to the more affordable city of Rochester, New York. He became politically active after the election of President Trump. He went from volunteering to being a paid worker on campaigns of people whose platform he supports. I asked him to speak about his experience of the state of the world and the perspectives of friends and colleagues around his age. Andrew confesses to being a worrier. He talked about his worries about the future of democracy and economic security. He recognizes that addressing climate change through the political process is hard since, as he put it, the cat is out of the bag already. Many of his friends take an attitude of grim resignation toward that catastrophe. But he is not passive. He engages in the political process not just out of duty, but to make a difference. He's frustrated about our political failure to address income inequality in a state where the more liberal party has been in power for many years. Andrew only knows one person his age who has managed to buy a small condo in our area with a loan from his grandparents, in addition to working hard in savings. Some of Andrew's friends have moved away to places where housing is more affordable, and he recently moved as well. He said, quote, "As long as I've been paying attention to politics, I've heard, we need more affordable housing. We need to fix housing prices. We need to do this, ... And it's just gotten worse." He's also disturbed by the level of infighting he sees among local progressive politicians and activists. Everybody is a single-issue person, he laments. He suspects the political right is more unified and better organized, and that is not a comforting thought. He is troubled by racialized police killings. He was enjoying a visit to the zoo until he noticed all the signs saying that the animals he was visiting there were in danger of extinction. He has had the sense that when he was growing up, he was told how the world works. But he has found out that so much of it's BS. He sees many people his age doing their best to ignore the troubles that trouble him. As the waves of bad news hit, these young people become ever more disillusioned. He describes it as, quote, "a massive feedback loop, which ends up in grim resignation. Just put your head down, do what you can, try not to think too hard, you know." He is cynical about the advice he was given in school to follow your dream. For musicians, that dream was always difficult, but now it seems impossible. Andrew's preferred methods of coping are, and here are 5 bullet points. First, doing something political. He feels a responsibility to work toward the world he wants. Whether or not there's any hope of his work succeeding, just doing something helps. Choosing to separate himself from the people who drift far from him on the political spectrum to the point of conspiracy theories. He doesn't want to add to existing polarization, but sometimes he's just had enough. Dark humor or gallows humor helps. It comes out in small groups where people feel safe to express these darker views. He thinks his friend's satire is sharper than it used to be. Like many people his age, he's done some therapy. He sees people being more open and sharing their mental health struggles than when he was a teen, and he thinks that's a positive step. Though it's not his thing, he sees that religion can be a huge help in coping with life's dark side for believers. Andrew doesn't see a separation between nature and the human environment. He explained, quote, "The coolest kinds of green-themed stuff that I've seen that really gets people excited are gardens in cities and green spaces in cities. How do we integrate more nature into our spaces so there's less of a divide between the city and nature?" Unquote. He sees a recognition among his friends that we need to address the whole. There's no nature in isolation. Perspective. Supporting and supported. Ari lives in Southern California. She's 29 and is finishing up a PhD in environmental engineering, working on flood prevention. She's a mentor for young climate activists. She helped start the Los Angeles chapter of the Climate Reality Project. Her latest project is Reform and Sustain, a group for young climate activists from middle school through graduate school. Ari knows that a certain amount of climate change disaster is inevitable, but she believes that more is avoidable if a critical mass of people take action. She wants to be part of that, making that happen. She told me, "I believe action is the antidote to despair." Ari has found a day job that supports her goals. She's studying how to prevent flooding in different communities in the aftermath of fires. Flooding doesn't always conform to the models that engineers use. Flooding patterns in a wealthy coastal California suburb look very different from floods in Tijuana, just over the border in Mexico. Because her research group, the Flood Lab at the University of California at Irvine, took the trouble to talk to people in Tijuana who had lived through floods, they learned how important it is to revise their models to reflect different affected communities' situations. An elder has mentored and supported Ari in the Climate Reality Leadership Core training, and she in turn is supporting people younger than she is. She wants the group Reform and Sustain to be a place where young people can bring their concerns and anxieties and hold space for each other to talk and be listened to, which they seem to need and appreciate. She trusts that the young activists she supports are capable of talking about challenging topics that many adults wouldn't bring up with them. When we spoke, the group had just discussed composting burials. That topic was their idea, not hers. These young people can feel isolated in their daily lives, with few friends to share their passion. They already know that activism takes a lot of effort and can take an emotional toll. Reform and Sustain has social gatherings where they eat together, something she doesn't see much in her activist groups with older members. This leaves them feeling connected and committed to the group. In her hectic life, Ari stays grounded with a daily transcendental meditation practice. TM is a simple style of meditation that uses the repetition of a mantra. She has had spells of grieving. She explains, quote, "When I heard that we were pulling out of the Paris Agreement, I got upset because I thought, how many people are going to needlessly die because of this?" Unquote. What gave her the most hope during that time was finding other people who cared, who thought that they could make a difference, and with whom she could work. Ari shared why she does what she does. Quote, "What motivates me to keep doing that is I know there's a possibility that I will have a future where my kids, if I decide to have kids, or at least future generations, I can tell them I really tried to do the right thing. I really tried to make the world a wonderful place for you." Unquote. Telling children the truth. A quote from Owl Drums. "When the elders tell the truth, the young people will be fine." I like that. When the elders tell the truth, the young people will be fine. Just tell children the truth. That sounds simple, right? But of course it's not. Isn't the truth too dark? That is a challenge that we need to overcome for ourselves. We need to know and be able to tell what we understand of unfolding troubles and to admit what we don't know. Younger children don't need to know. Notice what your child fears and tread lightly. Teach them tools for relieving fears without expecting immediate results. Notice how they find strength and courage. Lift those skills up for them. Allow them to dream. And don't be afraid to admit what you don't know. Quote, "I don't know what will happen, but we'll get through it together. I'll be here for you." Unquote. Tell children stories of courage and resourcefulness and generosity. Tell them about your heroes and mentors, the people whose actions embody your values. Tell them stories of hard times and how people got through those hard times. It's a great excuse to discover and learn those stories ourselves. I'm going to read that again. Tell children stories of courage and resourcefulness and generosity. Tell them about your heroes and mentors, the people whose actions embody your values. Tell them stories of hard times and how people got through those hard times. It's a great excuse to discover and learn those stories ourselves. As children get older, we can do our best to counter prevailing messages such as your worth is found in money, status, and possessions. If you don't have those things, you're a failure, or the worst one, you are responsible for saving the world. Knowing that we don't know how to live in the world we suspect is coming, we can invite them onto a path we are following to serve honorably, to build relationships with people in the non-human world, to develop social, emotional, and practical skills, to be creative and loving on purpose. I'm going to read that again. Knowing that we don't know how to live in the world we suspect is coming, we can invite older children onto a path we are following to serve honorably, to build relationships with people in the non-human world, to develop social, emotional, and practical skills, to be creative and loving on purpose. Older children have keen eyes for hypocrisy. We can admit the gap between our ideals and our practice and model the art of self-acceptance. Providing children a secure base. A quote from Gabor Mate. Safety is not a question of a lack of threat. Safety is the presence of connection. Secure attachment is the best emotional foundation for a child's resilience in hard times, and that requires steady love. I'll say it again. Secure attachment is the best emotional foundation for a child's resilience in hard times, and that requires steady love. Secure attachment is also the best antidote to anxiety for a young child. The best thing we can do for the children in our lives is to show up for them, to love them well, and continue to learn and serve as best we know how, while we regulate our own anxiety. End-stage capitalism has privatized many community functions. This may leave nuclear families alone with little support. Neighbors, grandparents, adopted aunts and uncles can make a big difference by showing up and supporting families. Children with chaotic or lonely lives can sometimes have a transformative relationship with one outside adult. This can be a teacher, relative, mentor, or neighbor who supports and believes in them and can be with them through their personal storms. Children at different developmental stages require different approaches. Preschoolers need to know a little more than how to explore the world and their bodies through play, to practice emotional intelligence through relationships, and to feel confident that they have a secure base with a parent or other carer, or more than one, who is calm and available. They need healthy relationships, not only with family, but with other people and with non-humans. What you say to them by rote and show them by repetition is what will lodge in their bones. Songs work especially well. Choose your words with care. Grade school children want to learn and master life skills. They trust you and their teachers to lead them. And here are 5 bullet points. They can hear stories that allow them to imagine taking a constructive place in the world. The default stories of my culture, of superheroes and might making right, of good guys and bad guys, of money and career as the measure of success, will fail them. What stories can we tell them to show them that they have a place to live, create, love, and serve in a troubled world? These are essential questions for us to explore. Next bullet point. We don't have to dwell on troubles, but we can be simple and straightforward when asked about them. Children this age can learn hand arts and crafts for living, such as cooking, woodworking, sewing, bike repair, gardening, or other arts. They can have a few skills for a simple and rewarding life. Parents of children in high-pressure schools can model respectful limits by setting them around homework with the school and teachers. They can hear our values and see them put into practice at this critical age. That's the best. That is teaching at its best. By high school, if not before, children in the Western industrial societies are pulling away from their parents, doing their best to belong with people their own age. A parent is unlikely to be able to do much educating in a top-down manner. Rather, parents can try cultivating, through example and expectation, a good listener, a skilled negotiator, and a self-directed, thoughtful bearer of some necessary family duties. Punishment and reward can thwart that. Parents must give respect to their teens and request it in return. They must listen well if they expect to be heard. When struggles happen, they can step away from power plays and instead reveal their feelings and needs, while validating their teen's perspective. The goal, not long off, is a mutually supportive relationship of equal adults. Consider ways that a teen can experience a rite of passage to capable adulthood. A parent will likely not be able to provide that experience alone. At 28, my adult child is no longer my child. He is his own person. My time to guide him is done. My job now is to respect him and seek to hear and understand him. Perspective. Teaching children ecophilia. Peter teaches big ideas to small children in his forest school in the mountains above Palm Springs, California. His favorite big idea is ecophilia. Nature has many examples of love and care, and in order to thrive, we must love and care for it back. This isn't a nice abstraction. It's a way of life. Peter finds that, like most big ideas, ecophilia is far easier to teach to children than to adults. He has observed that when adults enter a forest, they act and feel consciously other than the forest. They walk in a stiff and careful way. He describes it as, quote, squeezing through the hole of a donut, unquote. When children visit a forest, they become the forest, hiding in leaf piles, wading through the brush, collecting found treasures, and wearing a generous coating of forest duff. When they finally emerge, they often bring tales that reveal a deep connection. Peter can explain ecophilia in scientific terms, listing the interdependent webs of mycelium, plant, insect, and animal, of which we are an integral part. He can also explain ecophilia in human relational terms, by recognizing how the non-human world sustains us, a form of love and care that calls forth our gratitude and our desire to return that care. We need to know ecophilia not only as a fact, but as a living relationship in order to participate in it. He sometimes hears kids reciting ideas from the wider culture, which he calls ecophobia. They may do this even after they have participated in his forest school for years. Plants grow far apart, asserted one 13-year-old, because they compete with each other. This idea was promptly disproved with great hilarity because Peter and the boys were walking through a jumble of plants intertwined with one another. It's a dog-eat-dog world, another child said. When have you seen dogs eating each other? Peter challenged. Peter's advice is simple. Teach your child ecophilia. The best way to teach ecophilia is by living it. The way to develop ecophilia is to get out in nature. This is easier for some people than others. Yet most of us can manage a windowsill garden and bird watching at the park, at the very least. Ecophilia is not the only big idea Peter wants us to know and teach our children. For instance, forests are starkly different places from factories. They are emergent and complex, rather than planned and controlled. Children's learning, resilience, and creativity are much better fostered in a forest-style school than a factory-styled school. Peter is writing a book on education. In the meantime, he has free resources to support parents and teachers at, and she gives the hot link. It's actually a long thing, but if you Googled Hilltop Education, I think you'll get there. Yeah, it looks like it's hilltopeducation.com. Many voices. What do the old owe the young? Ever-increasing rates of anxiety and depression among Western youth, from long before COVID, are signs of the despair over the world that they are experiencing. While treating individuals is helpful, the causes are systemic. When so many young people suffer, the system that they are raised in is broken. Focusing on root causes helps relieve young people of shame or blame. It also invites us to find ways to live that support psycho-spiritual health. What do we owe the young in this time of great loss? What words and actions can we offer to support and encourage the teens and young adults in our lives for the hard road ahead? Parents have a special challenge, but all adults can find ways to act as elders to support younger folk. Here are some answers people gave when the question was asked in the Deep Adaptation private Facebook group, what do the old owe the young? Apologies, 3 bullet points. Apologies and support for how young people choose to respond or adapt, not nagging lectures. Deep, unrelenting apologies. I think what I need is a sincere apology and recognition of the depth of suffering my generation feels now and will feel. I don't need boomers to do anything other than stop making it worse and take responsibility for failing to act. Encouraging and supporting. Talk less and listen more. Stop instructing and start empowering. Encourage them to take the reins. And help them to create a narrative and find their purpose and meaning in life. Encourage their art, music, and creativity, as I truly believe that the artists will help us emotionally deal with what's coming. And we owe them opportunities to build the skills that they will need in this uncertain future. We owe them body wisdom practices that will support their own deep adaptation. And the last section, practicing elderhood. 6 responses. Learn how to be the elder you wish you had as a youth, as a young adult, and as a parent. Do the psycho-spiritual interior work that will make us worthy of being called elders. Younger generations fight the same feeling of guilt as many of their elders. We can help them by showing the way out, by being an example of how to deal with guilt for those things that we do not have control over. But first, we have to deal with our own guilt, shame, and grief. My college students were racking up enormous debt for the promise of a job in the real world. They were working 30 hours a week and taking 18 credit hours. We were training them to hustle for debt repayment and to disregard their well-being. I started asking them what made them feel nourished. They talked about family dinners, friends who cared about them, food with an uncomplicated backstory, and rest. These are things they didn't have much access to in college, so we spent time in class creating work that nourished them. Solidarity economy projects, figuring out how to buy something cooperatively. Ecological projects, designing a food forest. And mutual aid projects, sharing stuff. Learn how to be a mentor. And teach how to grow food or rebuild soil. Whatever you enjoy about life, teach them that. Share your passions with them. The word owe calls forth ideas of wealth transfer. In the United Kingdom and the United States, younger generations have significantly smaller real income and home ownership than baby boomers did at their age. 3 bullet points or 3 experiences. What do boomers owe? Money, yes, money. Reparations. Pick an activist and make them the beneficiary of your life insurance. Some boomers, 20% in the UK, own multiple properties. More have a nice front yard that they could let local young urbanites use to try out city farming and permaculture. Some have a lot of acreage on their vacation homes that could have a partial use for a tiny home eco-village. Older folks could have a communally maintained grant fund to help young people or young families who want to turn their yards or patios into food forests or pollinator hubs instead of grass. There aren't enough apologies in the world that could replace giving one young person or couple or family a leg up. It's messy, there are legalities, and no one wants to put themselves out there or get taken advantage of. Yes, I know. But if not now, when? Money, land, and housing would be nice. I know it sounds far-fetched, but seriously. Being responsible elders begins with a quote from James Baldwin. Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they have never failed to imitate them. Oh, that's great. Children have never been very good at listening to their elders, but they've never failed to imitate them. It is time to allow young people to take authority and responsibility for their lives. Our modern ways of life no longer serve them. Our foundational gift to children can be seeking to live as if Earth matters. Additionally, here are some things that we can do. 1. Things to avoid. Avoid saying, "Well, I've had my run. If the world goes to hell, I won't have to live to see it." Likewise, avoid saying, "Your generation will have to step up now and fix things." These things are too cruel. Avoid judging young people. Avoid imagining that they are deficient, defective, or incapable. Avoid sounding like you have any fixes or answers. 2. Point out stories that have failed us and suggest stories that work. We elders can point out that stories that blame youth for not doing the nearly impossible or not being able to fix our predicament are wrong. We can take responsibility for what we were not able or willing to do. The world is beyond saving, but much living, learning, and loving remains. We can offer young people stories in which they can succeed at what is doable by living those stories ourselves. The most valuable stories affirm the intrinsic worth of every person and the value of creative, service, and caring work. 3. Support and encourage young people to experiment with living and learning from different models than those given to them by our sick culture. Can we begin by admitting that we're part of and products of a sick culture? Can we grant young people the authority to envision cultures and life ways that may sound absurd to us? Such humility does not come easily, but I believe it's necessary to empower young people. Meanwhile, we elders can give permission and make opportunities for young people to experience nature, learn creative, household, and handy person skills, and practice ecophilia, developing a relationship with the non-human world. Everyone should know about woofing, that's WWOOFING, worldwide opportunities on organic farms, where they can work 4 or 5 hours a day for days to months in exchange for food, lodging, and experience. 4. Lift up the dignity of work and the freedom of living simply. Working at the shoe store or the grocery store is not a failure. It's honorable work. Making do without things one's parents took for granted is not failure. It shows realism and respect for our earth home. 5. Give resources to empower young people. We elders can identify ways to empower youth and give them time or money as we are able. We can befriend young people, maybe house them for a while, maybe pay some of their expenses to live in ways that they feel called to live, or just invite them to stay with us for a while to save money. We can mentor what we know, whether simple living, spiritual practice, social organizing, emotional regulation tools, gardening, craft, or repair, ... And 6, be compassionate witnesses, deep listeners, and encouragers. The world of the future truly is in the hands of young people. They may need guidance, but more than that, they need their visions and efforts affirmed, not dismissed. Elders can make sure the dreams, struggles, and stories of the young are heard, honored, and respected. We can trust them, believe in them, and support them as they live into their future. I've said it, now I get to live it. Fellow elders, what's on your list? Summary and reflection. Many young adults in industrial consumer society expect and experience a world of fewer opportunities than their parents, and looming disasters as well. Elders cannot change this reality, but we can support the children and young people who must face it. And here were the sections in this chapter. Ellen wants to be happy and finds simple but important ways to be of service. Andrew is prone to grim resignation but works in electoral politics to help build the world he wants. Staying active feels good, whatever the result. As Ari studies watershed management, she's also supporting environmental activists her age and younger. relationships with other activists sustains her. What do we tell the children in hard times? The truth, in gentle and age-appropriate terms. Secure attachment and our own emotional calm is the best gift we can give children in hard times. After that, what children need varies with age. Ecophilia is Peter's word for the relationship with nature that Peter teaches in his forest school. Many voices speak about what the old owe the young in these times. And finally, my reflections on how we who are not young might become effective elders for the young people in our lives.